This is Out of Bounds. If it's happening in the world of golf, we're talking about it. Coverage, debate, discussion, pro golf and local golf. Let's do it. This is Out of Bounds. And here are your hosts, Nate Sharman and Josh Durso.
All right, welcome back to Out of Bounds. Josh Durso and Nate Sharman here. We are recapping the Players' Championship, a huge Sunday after Cam Young got his second career win at TPC Sawgrass. We're also going to be talking about the tour's proposed schedule changes after Brian Rolap's press conference this past week. But we got to talk about Cam. What an absolutely, dare I say, career-defining win and Sunday for that young man.
Most definitely career-defining, right? On the Players' Championship is the fifth major, right? As we've talked about. But yeah, what a Sunday. I mean, just absolute electricity. Ludvig Åberg comes in the round with a 3-shot lead. He, on 11 and 12, rinses a couple water balls, and we got a golf tournament, right? It's, Matt Fitzpatrick controls it from there, and then 17 and 18 come around, and Cam Young, who's just hanging around all day, makes a big putt on 17 and has a nice 4 on 18 to win the 2026 Players' Championship. And the year of Cam continues, right? With getting his first win on tour late last year. Plays well in the Ryder Cup, and now another win here. So 2 wins in the last 11 starts for Cam after not winning in 93 starts. So it's just amazing for this young 28-year-old how he's really busted out of the gate.
Yeah, 2 wins and 11 starts. That's impressive no matter who you are on the PGA Tour, especially on this PGA Tour where there's so much competition.
Right.
And then that drought. Do you think everybody's forgotten now about those 93 starts without a win now that we have 2 big wins for him here in the still early part of his career?
Yeah, it's certainly excusable, right? You get these wins, right? Especially with how big this win was at the Players, too. It's not just like winning any event, right? This is a huge event on the PGA Tour with huge stakes, right? They call it the best field on the PGA Tour, and that's debatable these days, but it's still incredible what he did, right? He, aided obviously by Ludvig rinsing those couple balls, but he then went and chased down Matt Fitzpatrick, who was playing in his group, and stayed the course throughout the round, made a bunch of birdies, shot 68, and wins the trophy. So it's pretty amazing what he did.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, we're going to talk about the Ludvig collapse here in a few minutes, but honestly, this doesn't feel. We've seen some Sunday leads lost the last month on the PGA Tour. This doesn't feel like those. This feels like a guy who just went out and chased down whoever the leader was and got the job done. He led the field in proximity to the hole. He had some absolutely elite scrambling weekend, 16 for 21. Obviously, he birdied 17 on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Sunday, the wind was absolutely whipping, and to make a birdie on 17 under those circumstances, it's the 71st hole, and then to follow that up with that absolute bomb of a drive on 18 on the 72nd hole with all the pressure, it was a very, very impressive performance overall.
Yeah, it's certainly, I think, a collapse for Ludvig Åberg. I know if he just shoots even par today, or even par on Sunday, he's in a playoff with Cameron Young. Certainly not a collapse for a guy like Matt Fitzpatrick, who's up 1 with 2 to go, right? And then Cam Young chases him down. You can look at the scorecard and say, well, Fitz made a bogey on 18 when he was tied for the lead. But 18 was a hole that was bogeyed by a lot of guys. I mean, I think both Fitzpatrick and Cameron Young, I think they doubled it on Saturday. So it was a hole that was played very hard. I mean, 20-mile-an-hour winds, water all the way up the left side, pine needles and trees up the right side, a very daunting tee shot, right? And so I think this certainly isn't a collapse for Matt Fitzpatrick, but to me, it's certainly a collapse for Ludvig Åberg.
What stands out to you most about Cam's game overall, especially after seeing how he played this past weekend?
Yeah, I think it's the putting, because the ball striking has always been there for Cam. He's always been a very powerful player with those sort of loud traits that we talk about in other sports, right? But Cam Young, he has that different golf swing, right, that people tend to love, right? And I've really fallen in love with it over the last year. But just watching him play, and you always were kind of mystified by the putting, right? He seemed like he had a lot of these big putts. He shot 59 on the Travelers. He's been around the last few years, but he's missed sort of the big putts, right? And now he's making them, and it just seems like everything's changed for Cam. I think it's really unconventional for him. It's interesting that the caddy comes in and reads his putts, right? You don't see that a ton on the PGA Tour, where the caddy steps in and reads that putt for him, and Cam kind of, for lack of a better term, putts it where his caddy tells him to, and that's pretty impressive too. Another thing by Cam too is the golf ball change that he went through. Well, about a year ago, or a little even less than a year ago, before the Wyndham, Titleist, his golf ball manufacturer, comes out and creates a new golf ball for him. They've had the Titleist Pro V1 single dash. They make the double dash for Cam Young, so it spins even less for him. So he comes out and it's proved to be really good for him because he obviously wins at the Wyndham, plays really well at the Ryder Cup, and then he wins now here at the Players Championship. So you can see two distinct things in his game that have come for the caddy reading his putts for him and helping him out on the green. And the double dash golf ball being a big changes for Cam Young is what I've seen over the last, I would call it 10 months or so since the winning started for Cam here on the PGA Tour.
Yeah, it's interesting. For me, it's the putting too. Just he's so stoic. It kind of coincides the clutch putting, which, as you say, is sort of a newer thing for him. It goes along with the whole energy that he brings to the golf course, right? Like he's a very low key but stoic player, powerful but understated. And when he was standing over that putt on 17, you just knew he was going to make it.
Oh yeah,
there was no question he was going to make that, and all the energy was there. And then he just follows it up with that absolutely incredible drive on 18. The caddy thing is kind of interesting to me. We were talking a little bit before we came on. If you were one of these guys, if you were in that situation, would you be one that takes a read from the caddy, or would you just want to be like most of the players on tour? It seems that ball in my hand, I want to make the decision. It's not a conversation.
Yeah, I think I would lean towards wanting a read, right? Maybe not every time, maybe just some of the time. You're definitely asking some of these grizzled veterans, to come in and look at these putts for you. But I totally understand why a lot of pros don't do it. They want the ball, right? For lack of a better term, they want good, bad, or indifferent, right? For it to be on the onus to be on them, and don't necessarily need the green reading as well. Too, these guys are really well experienced. So I guess I see it from that respect. But I would probably want the second opinion. How about you?
Yeah, I would also want the second opinion. These guys are walking the golf course as much as the players, maybe more than the players, because they're getting their forehand a lot of times and they're doing some additional scouting on the golf course. They're looking at the greens from more angles week in and week out than the players typically do. It's a resource, right? And you want to, if it's me, I want to take advantage of all the resources I possibly can in that situation. So I would be listening to my caddy a ton, maybe not doing what, it's not like a one-sided decision, right? It's a two-way, it's a conversation, but I think it's one worth listening to, because I think you give yourself more data, more information, more to think about, and you're probably more times than not in a better spot to make the right read than if you just don't.
Yeah, for sure. And, it's interesting, you saw a guy when Wyndham Clark especially came on the scene, right? You saw his caddy always comes in and reads all his putts for him, and he's often holding a club too, kind of simulating the putt. So it's really interesting to see how these guys operate on the green with their caddy, right? And especially down the stretch of these PGA Tour tournaments.
So obviously you mentioned the Ludvig collapse, shoots 40 on the back nine, finishes T5. It's not a end of world kind of situation. He can clearly rebound from this. But, his last win was at the 2025 Genesis. He's got a dozen top fives. What do we make of this past week? Because I think for a guy that we talk so much about, especially in terms of being like a potential challenge on the European side to Scottie Scheffler, because he is such a young player, what do we make of, how he played this past weekend and how that fits into the bigger picture of his game as a professional?
Yeah, so it's two things for me, right? First of all, winning is really hard, and it's especially really hard on the PGA Tour, right? He had a 3-shot lead going into that back nine and, can't convert it. We see that time in and time again on the PGA Tour. The last few weeks, Shane Lowry had a 3-shot lead with just a few holes to go and lost. Last week, you have Daniel Berger with the lead, and Akshay Bhatia comes in and gets them. So it definitely happens a lot, and I think it's easy to just kind of put it to that. But the second thing I think of too is, Ludvig Åberg is famously a very fast player. He's a guy that likes to not make a lot of decisions over the golf ball. He takes a swing pretty quick. I would say he's probably the fastest, if not the fastest. He's up there on the PGA Tour in terms of that. On Sundays with these PGA Tour events, especially on the back nine, when these guys are grinding for a $4.5 million entry, right, in the $25 million purse in total, right? These guys are really slowing down. And I don't think that's a problem at all. I think that's just you play for this bigger purses. These guys are always going to slow down. So I don't know if this is just me speculating, but it looked like Ludvig had to wait a lot and other players had to wait a lot too. So it's not just on one player or two players. It's most of the field, right? And I think, having to do that, it's going to be really interesting for Ludvig to have to slow down his processes and get out of his normal pre-shot routine and try to slow his body down, right? So I think that might be a little bit of me speculating, but I think it's definitely something to look at where Ludvig isn't able to play as fast as he normally does coming down the stretch of these tournaments.
Yeah, I agree. I think, his pace of play is one thing, but again, he's so young and he's got so much in front of him and he's going to have he's going to be in this spot again and he's going to be in this spot so many more times in the future that I think,
right.
You can sort of excuse a couple. I think the thing that that gets underappreciated is the fact that he's been close so many times in a very young career. That's, right. And these are all learning moments. And I think big picture, not a huge deal, but something that we'll definitely be watching because this is a guy that we have really high expectations for, right?
He's a guy you're going to see at the Masters in a month, right? And I wouldn't be surprised if he contends there because he plays well there. And I don't think he'll be off the shelf for very long. That's for sure.
Yeah. So let's talk about our picks from our Pick'em episode this past week. My winner pick wound up walking off the golf course after one hole with an injured back, Colin Morikawa. He WD'd. We didn't really hear too much about him after that this past weekend. Nate, you picked Scotty Scheffler. Not his best showing, but pretty much what we've seen from Scotty the last few weeks, right?
Yeah, he seemed to hit his driver everywhere, especially on Thursday and Friday. And on Saturday, he picked it up a little bit better. And then on Sunday, it was just kind of middling at that point. But, seemed to hit his driver everywhere. There's a lot of talk on social and from Bryson DeChambeau about Scotty Scheffler's golf swing. Bryson called his swing a foot and a half shorter, which seems kind of extreme to me, but it definitely is different. I think if you look at the two side-by-sides from, Scotty's prowess, I think you could definitely say they're different, but that's going to be really something to monitor and something to look for. I think a guy like Scotty Scheffler can figure it out in the blink of an eye, and I think there is still some positives to take out in that round on Saturday because he seemed to really be lacing fairways Saturday morning. So we'll see with Scotty. I think he's okay, though.
He's fine. Sure. He's working on it. He's tweaking the golf swing, which is normal. Like no player in the history of golf has kept the same golf swing their entire career. I thought I was looking at some of the stuff that people were saying about his golf swing, whether it's shorter, whether it's looks different in this way or that way. And all I can think is like, he has such an unconventional swing that how can there not be variations of his golf swing week in and week out? Like hole by hole, he hardly even finishes in the same position. So you're going to see different golf swings from him. The point, and this is just golf 101, right? Like he squares up the face. I think the bigger thing for Scotty Scheffler the past month, at least, has been clear discomfort with his TaylorMade driver. Like very clear discomfort with that new driver. He switched back to the old driver. He's tinkering with different stuff. The biggest thing is, and I think you texted me on Saturday maybe that he just didn't look comfortable. He was working the ball in kind of a weird way. And at the end of the day, this is all about the driver. Like he is getting the driver figured out the same way that he did try to figure out the putter back a few years ago before he went on his tear. So to me, not a big deal. This is a non-story. I think the story is, again, TaylorMade is just with their best athletes, compare them to every other club manufacturer on the market. If TaylorMade didn't have the marketing budget and effort and success that they do on social media, I think they would be getting crushed because every single year, one of their biggest players is having issues with their flagship driver or one of their flagship drivers. It's crazy. Like it's absolutely insane.
Yeah, he clearly has the driver yips, right? It seems like Scotty, when he was at his power, he was taking the right side of the golf course out, right? His only misses were left, and now he's missing it both ways. So I think it's getting in his head a little bit too. And when you get that two-way miss going, it's a mess up in the head for any golfer, right? I think anyone knows that. So it's going to be really interesting to see if Scotty can figure out the driver because he's got everything else figured out. To me, I know he missed some short putts in that tournament, but he does that a lot. I think that's no cause for concern, right? But it's just amazing watching Scotty with that short wedge in his hand. The distance control is just out of this world.
Yeah, and look, like if you can go through the tour stats, whether it's strokes gained or any of the other stats you want to point to or look at. He's in the top 5, top 10 in most categories. Like his game is not broken. He's already won this year. He's already done the things that if we were really talking about a slump, if we were really talking about a guy who lost it and was searching for it and couldn't find it, those things wouldn't be true. So that's just what I keep coming back to. Value picks, I know you maybe you don't want to take a victory lap, but I think you should take a victory lap given the fact that you picked Fitz, who nearly won. Even though he didn't win, he nearly did.
Yeah.
And he was what, 40, what he was like
43-1. You know, I woke up
41.
As a guy that, you know, would love to have that balance right before March Madness as we start here in a couple days. It's really, really tough because, you know, you walk into the day, you know, Fitz doubles 18 Saturday round, right? And kind of, you know, I said it in my video before the round, right? Kind of out of contention, right? And then all of a sudden he birdies 1, birdies 2, and you're like, whoa, okay. You know, he makes a birdie on 4 as well. So he starts on fire, right? And then he misses a bunch of putts, 10, 11, 12. And then he's all of a sudden he has the lead, right? You know, Ludvig washes a couple balls and Fitz makes a birdie on 12, and all of a sudden Fitz has the lead, and you're like, whoa, this is going to be fun. And then he's not able to convert it. So it's definitely sad, but it feels good to have a winner pick, almost win, right? Because that's what it's kind of been like for me the last few weeks, where it's been up and down. But yeah, almost got one at the bank, which would have been fun, Josh.
Yeah, it would have. I was really conflicted. We're texting as the final round is shaking out, and I could feel myself starting to root for Cam Young.
Yeah.
And
I was conflicted. I had Matt Fitzpatrick 43-1, and Cameron Young is clearly the more fun golfer to root for, right? Especially with the USA chance. I mean, that's a whole thing where I don't think we even dove into, right? With the Ryder Cup being last year, and Cameron Young is sent without a Xander Schauffele fast finish, right? Cameron Young is battling all these Euros, you know, with Åberg and Fitzpatrick and McIntyre. I mean, there's just Euros on the board, and it's Cameron Young. So it turns into on the golf course, which I think we can have a whole nother podcast about whether that's good for golf or bad for golf, with these guys being really kind of on the mean side to some of these Euros. But I think it's really interesting because it's really the American in me wanted to root for Cameron Young, and he's an awesome player because, you know, he's an awesome player to root for, a lot of fun to watch. I found myself rooting for him when I had a Matthew Fitzpatrick to win. I had to keep reminding myself, no, I need Matthew Fitzpatrick to win. So that was really sort of challenging in my head.
Yeah, it really was. I wanted you to have that balance heading into March Madness, but
needed it.
At the end of the day, I don't think I would have traded the electricity that Cam brought to getting that win for Fitz to win and for you to get that payout. I picked Chris Goddard,
but I didn't.
I picked Chris Goddard, and he was 47-1. I went to bat for him. I felt like he's been insulted in the week in, week out books. He finished his T56 6 over, was completely out of things. Maybe I need to stop picking him. I kind of feel like I've run with that now a few weeks, and I think I need to back off of it, even though he is still the only multi-time winner on the PGA Tour this year. He's got 2 wins. Nobody else does. But obviously, his game did not fit Sawgrass as well as it could have. Let's talk quickly about the props here. The 3 prop matchup that I gave you. Adam Scott finished T56, Jordan Spieth finished T32, and Sam Burns finished T13. You picked Spieth, if I recall correctly, out of those 3.
Yeah, and Spieth had it going. It seems like whenever he gets close, it seems like he takes 2 steps forward, 1 step back every time, right? It's just interesting. I think it was Dylan DeShare who had a great tweet about Jordan Spieth. It's whenever you see a picture or whenever the broadcast goes to a player behind a tree and you can't tell what player it is, 99% of the time it's Jordan Spieth. Yep. And I think if Jordan Spieth could just, I know we've been saying this for a long time about how if he could just figure out the bad, and because the good is really good, if he could just figure out a way to limit the bad, it'd be really good for him. Josh, can you believe Jordan Spieth has won in 4 seasons? It's been 4 years since Jordan Spieth has won. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, no, I can't. I mean, he's one of those guys that
he's literally a fan favorite.
In there. Yeah, he had the injury in there, so I say subtract a year out of that, because realistically he was not effective one of those years. But yeah, you know, I want to say that I'm seeing decent enough things that make me feel like he could win at some point this year. I just don't know if he could win a signature event. I think he could win a non-elevated event. but I don't know that he could win a signature event with how erratic his game is, even when it's operating at what seems to be its best.
He just makes an untimely double bogey. And I think if he
Yeah.
can just find a way to eliminate that, or to even make a bogey versus that, because he makes a pile of birdies. And when that putter gets hot, there's no one more fun. When the putter gets hot and he gets going, there's no one more fun on the golf course to watch than him, because it's just electricity all the time.
Yeah. A couple other names that we talked about in the last episode: Justin Thomas, Brooks Koepka. I thought it was crazy that they had essentially the same odds coming in, but they performed pretty similarly. So obviously the bookies know something that I don't. JT flirted with contention, but never quite got there. Finished his T8 at 8 under. Brooks, meanwhile, finished T13 at 6 under. What stood out to you there? Did either of those surprise you? Justin Thomas didn't really seem like a surprising performance. He came out playing really well on Thursday and just carried that through most of the weekend. Brooks, I wasn't really expecting that.
I disagree. I thought it was really surprising from JT. I mean, this is a guy that hasn't played all year, right? He comes back last week and shoots 79, right? And then he chooses to come back at a time where they're playing extremely hard golf courses on the PGA Tour, right? And then he lights it up at TPC Sawgrass. Shows no signs of last week, and we might have a JT that's back on tour, and that's something the tour needs, right? Because JT is a fun guy to watch. But so I was really impressed with JT. Brooks, I was also impressed with. Obviously, it seems like really interesting to me because we know with Brooks Koepka, when the going gets tough, this guy's going to rise to the top. And that's really, really impressive, showing as we get into our first major in the next month, and then we get further into major season, is Brooks is going to be a pick to win one of these big events. And I think he should be, because like I just said, when it gets tough out here, Brooks has proved and shown time and time again that he knows where to go and he knows what to do when it gets tough. He doesn't make those big mistakes.
Yeah, familiarity is really important. And I think the fact that he has experience at this golf course made it easier for him to come back, even though he hadn't played here in quite a while. Comes back, plays well. We've seen this now a couple times with him coming out at places where he's familiar and he knows what's what. We saw it in majors. So, I think going into the Masters at Augusta, he would be a favorite. He'll certainly be a favorite at the U.S. Open and the PGA, no matter where it is, because those are the two majors that he's had the most success at. So, I could see him being a top 5 or top 10 pick, at least 3 of the majors this coming year. So we'll see.
Yeah, let's see him keep playing well, right, and get into some of these elevated events. He's climbing the ranks in terms of, the Aon Swing 10 and stuff like that. So it might not be long until we see Brooks in the elevateds.
Yeah, I think we're probably going to be there within a month or a month and a half or so. Bryson DeChambeau wins after Richard Lee misses a microscopic putt in a playoff at LIV Singapore. We saw the video, or I should say I saw the video. Was pretty baffling to see a professional golfer miss that putt, Nate. Yeah. Obviously, there wasn't much else to talk about with that event, but what'd you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's a putt that Canadian Richard Lee missed that you give to most people. It's a 2-footer, and Bryson wins that tournament. The only thing I have to talk about from there is on 17, or not on 17, on Saturday, excuse me, the clip came out of Bryson being in the bunker. He's right out of the bunker. He hits a shot, then falls into the bunker. There's big bugs flying all over the place. And, I think it's just when, that clip comes out, I believe it was either Sunday morning or Saturday. I believe it was Sunday morning. And then the Players Championship has this absolutely amazing finish, right? And you just got to think that Bryson and Rahm are looking at this finish at the Players Championships and saying, what are we doing here? I know, they're never going to say it, but they've got to be thinking it, because what a finish on the PGA Tour compared to what they had over at LIV.
Yeah. And you know what? It's funny because if the next thing we have to talk about here are the proposed, or what seem to be no longer proposed, but imminent schedule changes coming to the PGA Tour. Looks like we're going to have a lot more of that excitement built into the PGA Tour schedule. Among the changes that were announced last week as possibilities for the 27 and or 28 season, courtesy of Brian Rolap, expanded top-tier tournaments beyond the current 8 signature events, which would create roughly 21 to 26 premier events each season. That would obviously also include the Players, Majors, the FedEx Cup playoffs, the Ryder Cup, the President's Cup, the years those happen, but elevating more events so that there are more signature events in big spots. Also, there would be a 2-tier track with premier and then a second tier. So the second tier would feature pathway tournaments alternate field events, and opportunities for players to sort of elevate themselves into these bigger top tier events, which is cool. We've been talking about needing more of that because that's how you're going to develop these household names, these golf brands, player brands. So another big change, moving back into bigger fields, cuts, more players qualifying, the things you have been yelling and screaming about for going on 2 years now. The calendar would also be moving to a late January through early September situation, staying mostly out of the way of football, but condensing it a little bit so we don't have as much downtime in the beginning of the season, and so that the higher profile events, which can hopefully be moved into bigger markets like New York City, Chicago, Philadelphia, San Francisco, Boston, DC, can happen more towards the core of the spring and summer months, which obviously would be good because golf has said, or the PGA Tour has said, that it wants to own the summer. So more of that. And then the thing that got the most chatter, I think, on social media was, of course, possible changes to the playoff structure, maybe bringing hybrid play into the equation or a match play format for one or more events. It sounds like at the very least, the Tour Championship is going to be getting a change. All told, some of those changes are probably going to start next year. Seems like the Tour is really eyeing 2028 for full launch. So, Nate, when you look at all of those things, what stands out to you? What do you want to see the most, or what are you most excited about out of those possibilities?
When I saw new CEO Brian Rolapp say that we're going to play we're going to eliminate the no cut events, I think I did a fist pump because I've talked about it since they installed it. I think a lot of golf Twitter has talked about these no cut hit and giggle, I call them, events where these guys don't need to play that well, but they're going to cash a check, right? They kind of feel like LIV, and I don't think there's a place for them. And I haven't thought of that ever. I know the cream rises to the top with these events, and that's good. But look at what we just had. We just had a tournament where 123 players played. We had a cut. We had a traditional event, and the cream still rose to the top, right, Josh? I mean, you had Matt Fitzpatrick, you had Ludvig Åberg, you had Robert McIntyre, you had Cameron Young, obviously. I don't think you need a 72-man field, no-cut event for the cream to rise to the top. It's going to happen naturally, whether you have 120 players or you have 70, so you might as well put 120 in. And then you have cool stories. You have a guy like Shaderson Yelamaru, who posted a good round on Sunday and played overall really, really good on the weekend. He more than doubles his career earnings and gets himself into the Siggies, too, with his play. So you have some of these cool stories happen and the huge tier events. So having these no-cut events is something that they need, and I think something that is going to get new president Brian Rolapp a really good approval rating so far in this PGA Tour for life.
Yeah, look, like to me, I can point to like 3 or 4 of these things that are just no-brainers. Obviously, bigger fields and cuts. That's awesome. Like, I think most golf fans have wanted that. It's one of the things that I think has really been missed, not just by, golf sickos like you, but, everybody. Also, like, expanding the premier events so that they're more properly distributed across the PGA Tour season, to me, is the biggest positive to come out of all of these potential changes, because forever, the golf season seems to me, it feels like it peaks in like May or early June. For us in the Northeast, it's like the weather just starts to get good. And then we have these like obscene breaks and lags in the golf season and tournaments that just don't stack up to the ones that we see in the first third or at least first 40% of the schedule that we have now. And it just feels like such a letdown. Obviously, getting bigger events, whether they're playoff events or just these premier events, as they were described, into bigger markets, into the biggest markets in the country, can only be a positive. Like, I think if the Tour really should have confidence about anything from the last 12 to 24 months, it's that, TV ratings are up across the board.
People want to watch golf.
Yeah, people want to watch golf. So, obviously, like, it doesn't matter if we've seen plenty of examples of it not mattering if a big name is around the top. Ratings are still good. So, I think it's a strike while the iron's hot, make as many changes as you possibly can while you have the buzz, while you have the energy, and capitalize on it. And I think did you see anything in the list of changes that gave you pause or concern? I didn't see anything from my vantage point.
Yeah, the only thing I would worry about is if we don't. I think I'm really strong about starting the season at the Waste Management, and whether that means there is a lower tier event the week before. I think that'd be okay. But I think the main guys got to start at the Waste Management. I think they've built a ton of momentum there, and guys love to play it. It's a really good precursor to the Super Bowl. I think it's a really good structure. So that would be the only thing where I'm still not totally sure if they're going to start there. But I think it's really important and really big in my mind that they do that if that's the case.
I will say, after listening to the press conference, I was operating off the assumption that this would become a premier event. This would become a signature event, because it's ludicrous to me now that the WM Open is not a signature event.
Well, the only reason that this and TPC Sawgrass, what we just went through, isn't elevated is because then there would have to be a lot less players. And that goes into the
Right.
whole conversation what we had. Obviously there could still be a cut, but it could be 70 players versus 120 players. So I think that's probably why it doesn't need to be elevated. I think that goes back to our talk. These two tournaments can stand on their own. The Waste Management and the players can kind of stand on their own in a way. I don't think they need it. I think players are always going to play them. Especially the players. That doesn't. I don't. All this major talk. I know we went in this last week, but I don't think it needs to be. It needs to be a major. I think it can be fine how it is. I don't think you really need to touch it in my mind.
So I agree that the Players' Championship can stand on its own as it sits. You don't need to do anything with that. But the WM Open, I think it needs to be a signature event, because I think you need to mandate that golf's biggest names are actually playing in it.
I don't think you have any problem with that, though.
I can't remember a time when Rory's played it.
Well, because Rory always does that Dubai thing, but yeah.
To me, that's a huge, you can't have Rory McIlroy as it can be debated, but he's either the second, third, or fourth best golfer on the planet.
Right.
He needs to be at that event year in and year out. I understand he has desire to do the whole Euro Tour thing, the DP World Tour thing, but
and Tommy
you need to have, if it's going to, because it's sort of, to me, this would be starting the PGA Tour season the same way NASCAR started with Daytona. I feel like it's the same kind of fit, where your first race, your first event is a big signature thing, and you want all your names there. And to me, it's got to be elevated. It's got to be a premier event that's
Okay, I'll agree with you.
Mandated for the best players to be there for.
Actually, I'll agree with you on one concept, and we talked about it. Obviously, it needs to be a full field event, and I'll compromise with you on that one. And it looks like signature events are going to be that way again, hopefully soon.
Okay, so let's throw another one in there. Let's throw another caveat in there then. Would you be open to either the Players or perhaps an event like the WM Open being open to LIV players?
Yeah, I think I think if the Players wants to say, we have one of the best fields in golf, right? And I think they want to talk about that, they have to open it to LIV players. But then you get in the whole thing with the PGA Tour owning it, and that gets tricky, right? But I think you have to. I think it makes it that much better. I think you got to let Bryson and Rahm essentially play, and there's more other guys in that scenario. But yeah, in order to market your event as one of these biggest tour events, you got to let them play. And I think you do in the Players, especially. Maybe not the Waste Management. I think you can maybe brand that one more as PGA Tour event. But I think definitely the Players needs to go that route in the next few years.
Yeah, I think I would like to see maybe the 5 or 10 best guys in the LIV standings playing in this, just to see where they stack up. I also think it would be a bit of throwing a bone to the players on LIV who feel like they've been sort of scorned by this whole OWGR situation, where if you don't finish in the top 10, you don't get points. I don't know. I think it would make sense. And I also think it would make for really interesting television and a really interesting watch overall. It would be cool to see some of these LIV guys come over in a once a year situation and play in a cross field event, especially when it's one that's so large that obviously, right, we're never going to, I don't think we'll ever see this event get cross branded with LIV. I wouldn't even want it to be, but I think it would be cool as sort of an invitational to just have an invite extended to the best LIV guys to come play in it.
Yeah, but I don't know if they necessarily need it, right? I think they can say we have this really good field and this really good product, especially at the Players, and say we don't need you, and sort of force the ball to be in the court of the LIV guys, right, to kind of figure it out. Because I don't think the PGA Tour is ever going to bend to LIV. They're going to make LIV want to ascend to them, right? For lack of a better term.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I think we'll have Patrick Reed next year.
Yeah.
At the Players. That'll
Definitely.
be cool. That'll be cool. What else you got? You got anything else that you're watching this week?
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to have a full preview this week on the Valspar, right? But I definitely will be. We talk about picks and preview more on TikTok and here on YouTube, especially too. So be on the lookout for that. Hit that subscribe button on both those platforms to see those videos. But yeah, continuing on the Florida swing, we're at the Copperhead course at Ennisbrook, and I think it's been a lot of fun. We've seen these just awesome finishes in Florida, and I think we're going to see another one here at the Valspar. Last year, you saw Victor Hovland snatch the win from JT. So another good sneaky field at the Valspar, as we get ready to go for the Masters here in a few months. So I'm going to have my eye on Xander, right? He's a favorite this week. And, looking at other guys like Hovland and Fitzpatrick are also in the field. There's a bunch of other big names like Koepka in the field this week at the Valspar. So that'll be another fun one to keep moving on in this Florida swing.
Absolutely. Will be that. Hey, that's going to do it for this episode of the show. We'll be back next Monday. And if you want to see more of any of what Nate was just talking about or whatever else we decide to do in between here, follow us over on TikTok and, of course, subscribe on YouTube. We're posting there in between episodes. Easy way to let us know, too, what you're thinking. Drop a comment. There's been a lot of comments the last few weeks. At some point, we're going to need to start to do a bit of a roundup and talk about some of those comments. But that's always good to see. Anyway, have a great week. And you know the drill. Whether it's down the middle or out of bounds, keep on swinging.